Hello everyone, I am Marcus, the Open Science Officer at ITC at the University of Twente. My task is to help researchers adhere to open science principles. One of these open science principles is reproducible research. In this little presentation, I would like to talk about CODECHECK. CODECHECK is a process for independent reproduction of computations underlying research. It was originally developed by the two guys in the upper right corner, Nüst and Eglen and Nüst. But what does reproducible research actually mean? Reproducible research refers to achieving the same results, for example, tables, figures, and numbers as reported in a paper, by using the same source code and data. In open reproducible research, these materials are publicly accessible. This already tells a bit about who CODECHECK addresses. If you are currently working with a scripting language, for example R or Python, or develop an analysis that runs on data, CODECHECK is relevant for you. Let's start with CODECHECK and the philosophy underlying this initiative. Reproducibility tools like CodeOcean and Binder set the bar high by making code reproducible for everyone. CODECHECK simply asks, was the code reproducible once for someone else? CODECHECK checks if the code runs and generates the expected number of output files. The contents of those output files are checked visually and available for others to see. The validity of the code is not checked. For ITC staff, a CODECHECK is done by me, but if you are interested in becoming a CODECHECKer, just contact me. So how does the process look like? Essentially, CODECHECK is a four-step process. Before you submit a manuscript for peer review or as a preprint, you provide me with access to the manuscript and the underlying source code and data. This can be done by sending me an email including a link to a public repository, for example GitHub or GitLab, or you just send me a private folder. At this stage, the materials do not need to be publicly available. Then I will try to execute the analysis following your written instructions on my local computer, or if possible in the cloud, for example using my Binder. Then I will check if some or all of the reproduced outputs resemble the figures, tables, and numbers reported in the manuscript. If this is not the case, we can check together if the differences are crucial and why they occur. If the code is not executable, I will notify you and ask for help and then try it again. This process can have several iterations and may result in recommendations on how to improve the code before you submit a manuscript for peer review. If you use GitHub or GitLab, I can simply make a pull request, including all proposed changes. This will reduce the workload for you to a few clicks. In the case of a successful reproduction, I will create a certificate, including information on how I ran your code, what was checked, a copy of the reproduced outputs, differences between the original and reproduced outputs, and maybe why they occur, and recommendations on how to improve the code. The certificate also contains a link to your source code and data. So the materials need to be publicly available unless there are good reasons that speak against it, for example, sensitive data. Finally, I will publish the certificate on Zenodo. This will allow you to cite the certificate in the supplementary materials section of your manuscript, showing that you requested a CODECHECK and that it was carried out successfully. In addition, I will provide you with a CODECHECK badge that links to the certificate. You can add it to your repository to show that your code works. And it's done. I already carried out a CODECHECK for one of our ITC researchers. On the left, you can see the CODECHECK certificate. This is just a snapshot. If you would like to see the entire document, just follow the link under the picture. In the upper right corner, you can see a screenshot of the GitHub repository, including the CODECHECK badge. If you request a CODECHECK before submission, you can also include a paragraph about CODECHECK in the code and data availability section of your paper, as you can see it in the lower right corner. When is the best time to request a CODECHECK? At least a few days before you submit the paper for peer review or as a preprint is the best time to request a CODECHECK. This will ensure that what you submit produces the output reported in the paper. Of course, you can contact me at any time while you are working on the analysis, but please be aware that the CODECHECK might become outdated if you change the analysis during the peer review process. A CODECHECK can also be done after your paper is accepted and before it gets published. However, reviewers would not be able to consider the CODECHECK during peer review. Moreover, this would be a bad timing for surprises such as severe issues in the code that could have been found earlier. How to prepare for a code check. If you are running out of time, just write a bit of documentation, including a few instructions on how to run the workflow. All else I will do. All I need is access to the manuscript, the source code, and the dataset. If you want to speed up the process, please create a so-called research compendium. The idea behind the research compendium is to create a folder that includes all materials necessary to reproduce the results, including the manuscript, the dataset, and the source code. These components can be combined in a notebook based on the concept of literate programming. Two famous examples are the Python notebooks for the programming language Python and R Markdown for R. Last but not least, do not forget to add the license. If you are not sure which license to use, don't hesitate to contact me for help. So, who can request a code check? Any researchers, so professor, postdocs, PhD candidates, or students affiliated with ITC and planning to submit a paper that reports on an analysis based on source code and data can do so. How much effort do you need to invest? All you need to do is sending me an email with the materials. The rest is communication, and we might need a short appointment to discuss issues. That's it. What if the code check is not successful? No worries. The code check service is a safe space. Issues in the code will be solved in private conversations. If the code is not reproducible or you decide to cancel the code check, nobody will ever know. You will simply not get a certificate or badge. Might issues with the code damage your work? Not at all. With a code check, you show that you care about the quality, verifiability, and reproducibility of your work. That's just good scientific practice and will instead increase trust in your work. What if you cannot publish your data due to privacy concerns? That's not a problem. We can use a synthetic dataset to check your analysis. What if you use licensed or proprietary software? Although I strongly recommend using open source software to ensure verifiability and reusability by others, I can perform a code check as long as I have access to the software. We can also discuss open source alternatives before you start developing the analysis. What if your analysis takes days or weeks to run? No problem, we can create a data subset to reduce computation time. If a data subset does not reduce computation time, we need to check it on an individual basis, considering, for example, your paper deadlines. And finally, code check can also be applied to already published papers. So let's get started. If you need further information, please check the Open Science website. If everything is clear and you would like to start with your first code check, just drop me a message under m.concol@u20.nl. Thanks for your attention. See you soon.